So as you all know, I am Bob Anderson. I've been at OUC I've been at OUC for longer than 12 years, but for those longer years, I was an on-again, off-again IT consultant. And so I actually come from the IT side of the house. And then I moved to the light side of the force and became part of OT. Before you ask, OUC does not supply power to Disney. That structure that looks like the mouse ears does belong to us. That is one of our transmission lines that is connected, but Disney buys their power from TECO, not us. We bid whenever that comes up, but we don't always win. So OUC, as Rob mentioned, has been around for 100 years now. This slide needs to be updated just a little bit. We've now got closer to 40 substations, not 36. We have been #1 in reliability since 1998. That's the year that we changed our moniker to the reliable one, and that was our 75th anniversary. So cybersecurity project requirements, what we really needed to get out of this, or at least some of the stuff we were really hoping. We really wanted to get help with our NERC CIP compliance and just NERC compliance in general for these devices. It's one of those things where, so these devices, again, we're calling them grid edge, but for us, they're system protection devices. And so they're either protecting like a breaker or a transformer or a transmission line or something like that. And then actually there's other devices that we're going to be doing as well. That's one of the nice things about this is it's very vendor agnostic. Yeah, it just kind of, well, anyways, I'm going to keep going. One of the other things is we absolutely wanted role-based access, and we absolutely wanted Active Directory support. We have our system protection engineers and other technicians that are going to need to access this, and they don't need to remember 12 additional passwords to what they already have to remember. And so this was one of the things where it's just like, look, we want this to be as seamless as it can be. And it's one of those things, whenever we actually finally got it really moving, it turned out really well. The other thing is, this is really zero trust in the fact that, I mean, you always have to trust someone at some time. But once I set that initial password and then access the device, you can program this to where it's like, okay, hey, someone's asked us to access this device, I'm changing the password now. And to where it's like, okay, hey, now it knows, and if you're authorized, no problem. But if you're not, then hey, that password is in the database somewhere that you don't have access to as a default user. The other thing is it does obfuscate information. Now, one of the things I will say is it generates an RFC 1918 IP address, just to give you I guess a warm fuzzy of yes, I am connecting to something, but it's actually kind of making that up. And then it's one of those things where OUC has always been multi-vendor, and we're starting to have some problems with that with some of our vendors, but we still have a lot, and I mean a lot, of different devices from different vendors. They have different internal management platforms, but it's like, hey, we don't need more platforms, we need less. So the other thing that we really needed is, how are these devices doing? What is the firmware on the device? I mean, I know we all have spreadsheets and hey, here's the last time someone was out at the substation and they grabbed the config with their TCA, and here it is, and we're pretty sure that nothing's changed in it. Well, now we can be really sure. The other thing that we needed to do was, hey, we've got people that are going to be accessing this, and it's not that we don't trust their PCs, it's just that we want to mitigate as much as we can. And then, well, I mean, I guess the bottom line, a lot of the devices we have are really old. Some of them are lucky that we can talk to them at all. Some of them, it's like, okay, hey, this device actually supports a password, and that password can be 4 characters, but it need to be 4 uppercase letters because we don't even support numbers. And this system, it's one of those things where, I mean, you definitely, well, it's a NERC requirement to make things as complex as they can be. But with this system, it's like, hey, the fact that this is just 4 characters and they all have to be uppercase letters doesn't really come into play as much. So the other thing that we got out of this is, since these are devices that, for not all of them, but a lot of them, could potentially operate an asset on the bulk electric system, we don't want to do that through this software. This software is not about that. And so, and so again, you can set it up to where you could remotely access these devices. For our bulk devices, it's like, no, we get the monitoring, we get some logging, we get event collection, there's no remote. Now, but for some of them, it's like, okay, hey, you do get some remote. And potentially, I mean, a lot of the vendor software that you access this stuff with, right in the software, it's like, hey, you want to trip, press this button. This layer essentially gets in the way. Actually, it's one of the things we use, like a lot of people, we use a good bit of SEL. You get that terminal and you type OC, hey, that's what it's going to do. That's what you're telling it to do. You type that in this and it's like, no, that's not allowed. Which is really nice. And then right now, for most of our devices, if anything happens, it's like, okay, hey, we need to go get data from this because they are relatively disconnected right now. It's a truck roll. And so it's like, oh, hey, we want to make sure that that config we're pretty sure of, really hasn't changed. Really, it's a truck roll. Hey, something happened. We need to get the event data. It's a truck roll. And so this is going to at least help with that. Yeah, so I've already talked, well, yeah, this is all good. And so really it's one of those things where we're never not going to have truck rolls. But if it's a simple request of, hey, what firmware is on this guy? Or if it's a simple request of, what's the last 25 events he's seen? This is definitely going to take care of that. As well as I'm expecting to be able to, have basic visibility to these collection of devices. And hey, these 5, they didn't report in, or I tried to contact them and I couldn't. Maybe something's wrong. Now, again, maybe that's expected because there's some maintenance going on or something, but maybe we do need to go out and see, what's up. And so, yeah, so thankfully, OUC does not have, or at least in my area, doesn't have a ton of devices that really need the full NERC CIP workup. But we have a lot of these devices where, hey, even if it's not connected to the bulk electric system, let's just say it's connected to a lower distribution, like a 7200 kV or a 25 kV. then okay, we still want to know things. It would be, it'd be really nice, as well as most of your operations come from that distribution system. So, yeah, so like I mentioned before, OUC really is multi-vendor. We use just about all of these. Well, no, we use all of these. And we don't have all of these in this system yet, but you got to start somewhere. And so, yeah, it was one of those things where it's just like, okay, hey, we're finally gonna try to like move into the 2000s, because for years and years, well, I mean, we're still doing things in a very basic or fundamental way for a lot of things. But it's like, hey, we really do want to start getting into, hey, here's a way that we can actually manage these system protection devices and other devices on a more fundamental level, to where it's like, okay, hey, I know what this thing's config is. I know what's happened to it recently. And if something's changed, I'm going to let you know, or I want to let someone know that you can identify as someone who cares about this device. So we started out talking with our engineers, executive partners, and the vendor we'd selected. And again, the engineer, well, with some of the demos, the engineers were pretty happy. Some of the proof of concepts, it's like, okay, hey, we can get this working. But even still, even with all of that, it's still fundamentally, we're in the utility industry. Fast technology is not how it goes. So there definitely was some hiccups every now and then, as well as COVID happened, and so I guess process proving wise, it took longer than expected. But once we got over that, things are really starting to move now. And I will say that the install of the software is not the problem. Whenever we finally got down to, okay, hey, it's time to install the software, that was done in about 2 weeks. Now it's just a question of, okay, we've got 4,000-ish of these devices that we've identified so far. And okay, now let's think about what we're going to do next. And so it's the onboarding that's going to take a while, but still, you gotta start somewhere. So, and really, this is something that is going to allow us to kind of take control of some of the things that we've been wanting to do for a while. Right now, it's one of those deals where our devices get bought kind of in generations. And it's like, okay, hey, we know what we're pretty sure we know what we have, but it's like when you really want to drill down to what's the firmware on this group of devices, up until now, and I'm even going to say up until probably a year or two, or maybe more from now, it's going to be, hey, there's going to be a lot of truck rolls involved of, well, we're pretty sure of this, but if we really want to be sure, we're going to go out and see. But this is going to allow us to do a lot of that type of stuff much faster, which is really going to be really good. One of the things this will allow us to do is, if something has changed on one of these devices, this system will detect that. And hey, is this a change that is this a change we're expecting? And if it's not, then why not? Because OT in a relatively static environment is a very true statement. Not a lot changes too fast. Stuff does change, but it takes a while. One of the other nice things this will do is give our engineers and technicians kind of a single, well, the technicians still fundamentally have to be able to deal with the device on the device level. But if they're just trying to do something simple, it gives everyone kind of a single pane of glass to look at, hey, here's the devices that do this function. And yes, they could be from 5 different vendors, but here's the one place you can go to at least kind of look at what they're dealing with. So right now, I'm going to be brutally honest with this side and say that this was an estimate based on basically just the number of times that we are currently visiting our equipment just to make sure, hey, things still look good. And so I won't say that this is savings we've realized, but I think this projection is pretty good. And then, wow, I wish we were behind schedule because we're going to be ahead of schedule now. Because yeah, that's really it. Although I guess the other bright side would be we do have lots of times for questions. If you have it. So thank you.